Welcome to Connect for Health, the monthly webinar and podcast series brought to you by Cigna Healthcare Middle East with a little bit of help from mentl. I'm Scott Armstrong, the founder of mentl, a platform that tackles the stigma of mental health. And joining me, as always, is my amazing co-host, Maissa Al Khafajy, the head of Government Affairs and Strategic Communication. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what's going on with me today at Cigna Healthcare. Maissa, hi. I think I'm just going to hand over to you this morning. I'm talking so fast, I'm tripping over all my words.
It happens to us, Scott, but thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure being with you.
Today's episode is very, very timely. There's an old saying that says, you are what you eat, but are we also what we don't eat? Because obviously we've got the Holy Month of Ramadan upon us. So our topic today is all around nutrition, healthy plate, healthy mind. And joining us today is an amazing guest, Dr Shefali Verma, who is and I can never say this one right, integrative
not bad.
medical practitioner with a special interest in functional medicine, nutrition and proactive health. She's been working for more than 18 years in this space. She's worked with the UAE government, with athletes, with major companies. And welcome to Connect for Health.
Oh,
Dr.
thank you for
Shefali.
having me.
Always great to see you. Firstly, remember, we want your questions. We've got a great expert here, so please get involved. Now, if you're watching on the catch-up, remember that the live experience is purely for Cigna members. So if you want to get involved in the polls or indeed post your questions, please get in touch with Cigna Healthcare about membership. But also, you see, we're going to be talking about fasting, and sometimes there are some negative aspects or it can seem to be hard. But I wanted to bring you in and your sort of framing, because from your lived experience, obviously fasting every year.
So I fasted Ramadan, and what I was really keen on better understanding is the whole idea is not just today's discussion, today's topic. It isn't just about, trying to sustain your energy throughout the day. It's to really understand what fasting does to your body and how food helps facilitate the fast. A lot of people see it as a time for both a body and a mental and spiritual reset. I know that a lot of people start saying things like they get a better sense of they're more focused, clarity, and in some instances that their energy seems to be, pretty much kind of leveled. We do have shorter working hours, but it's really trying to explain a little bit more about how to navigate around your eating habits and how to do it wisely, and doing it during the month of Ramadan. Yeah.
It's always a good start, though, isn't it? I think sometimes people set up a better routine during that time and they take away what worked for them. But sometimes they don't really know what it was that actually worked for them.
Yes.
So true. I think there's, feeling good. There are also those people that don't feel good because of the way they do it, right? Like, you do have a lot of people who talk about how good it went, but you also have those people that talk about how it maybe didn't go as well as they thought. And I think with the whole eating window of Ramadan that you have, it depends on how you do it, because you have some people in terms of times of when they do eat, and some people who say, no, I need to still have my sleep, so I'm only going to eat that one meal. And will it sustain me well enough over a 30-day period to have that one meal? The first few days can be really challenging, and then they get used to it. Sometimes they talk about how their stomach shrinks. But choices of what they choose to eat can often be different to what they would generally eat. And even in terms of when we're talking about food and nutrition, if we talk about even inflammatory foods, they may choose to not have as many inflammatory foods because they're eating more at home or with friends. It's all cooked, makes a difference to how they would feel. But also, we are an abundant human nature where we tend to overeat. And this forces you to eat within a smaller time frame, which means that you are fasting for a longer period, which allows a lot of other things to reset. Digestion takes time. If you allow it to happen and then you go to sleep, you will have better sleep. If you have better sleep, you have better hormones. So there's a lot of things that can be potentially beneficial if we do it correctly.
So you've just literally sparked off about 15 different questions.
Too.
I'm so sorry.
No, I know.
No, that's why you're
thinking.
here. Before we kind of dive into the physical of it, because I'm also listening to you talk there, Maissa. How how much is mindset important going into a month of fasting, you know, the holy month of Ramadan in particular? I mean, I've recently sort of given up something that wasn't very good for me, a social lubricant that people sometimes, and I do this one for a month every year, but every time I go into it, it's like I'm telling myself I'm giving up something. So by the end of that month, I'm crawling to the finish line and I feel like I'm depriving myself. Whereas this time round, I'm talking to myself about I'm choosing something better. And actually, I don't feel like
It's the same.
Yeah.
I think that's such a great point to put out, because I think if we talk about health in general, I tell people in clinic, if you think of it as a diet, there's always an ending to the diet. And if there's an ending, you're always waiting for that ending to happen. It's a short phase. I can do it, don't like it, everything. But if you choose to look for a lifestyle, I rather it be slow in the right direction of this lifestyle than to be short, intense, and quick, you know. And I think this is also something that we need to almost move away from, these quick fixes. We were talking about this quick fix of doing something fast, slow, intense often isn't necessarily good for our mindset before, after, during. But when you create a lifestyle that is slow and sustainable, you're able to like commit to that consistency. And once you can do that, it doesn't feel as challenging to the body, you know.
I want to just kind of add another layer to that as well. It's the whole concept of Ramadan being 30 days it kind of links into the idea of habit formation and how it takes 30 days. So if you have a conscious will to have a certain habit that you want to change and maintain that change, then that is the mindset that you see it through. Like, you know, you think, okay, you know what? This isn't just going to stop at 30 days. This is going to allow myself to acclimatize and to continue thereon after it ends. So,
because the environment has allowed you to do that.
Yes,
And you actually have support without realizing you have support.
That is true as
and that's
well.
also super important to create a new habit.
So rather than waiting for the announcement and waiting that they've seen the moon, how can people actually start, who are preparing for the fast, start preparing for the fast mentally before they even start, you know, rather than just go, right, now, today, I'm not going to.
Do you know, I actually know a lot of people who say, like, let's take a habit that is, like, say something like coffee. You know, I know so many people who actually start giving up or decreasing their coffee intake, you know, weeks in advance, so they don't go through that withdrawal period on day one.
Because I think we all know how
are you going to
that is.
feel? So I think because we are aware of that mindset and we don't want to go there, we're already creating changes early to be proactive in order for us not to be feeling that. That is a learning behavior over years of doing Ramadan, and actually, you know, the first time you skip coffee, you're like, I'm not going to do that next year because that wasn't a good start. Maybe I'll try doing it before. And I think the more you understand, I still think with everything it's individualized. Not everybody will have the same experience during Ramadan. So I definitely think it's more important to know how did you deal with it? What things would you want to be different to make your changes early? It is your journey. And I think it's important to reflect a little bit earlier and then say, okay, how did it go last year? What would I have changed? Okay, this is the things that I'm going to make changes for this year. And then you get a new habit, you change a new habit, and you add to it, you know, to improve it over time. And that is health in general.
Yes, yeah. A friend of mine is actually, and I do feel that we were a little bit of a unsupportive group of friends
to each other.
So she, in this respect, so she had started what she referred to as a complete detox, but she took it a step further. It wasn't just coffee; it was many other things. So I mean, she doesn't really consume much refined sugar, but she pretty much kind of wanted to clear her body. And we were all saying, you have Ramadan to do that. Why are you doing it now? But it all makes sense, you know, and we do. I mean, I, as one, I have tried to alternate drinking my morning beverage to being more herbal teas, and not necessarily coffee, but I love the aroma of coffee. So at some point in the day, it is introduced. But yes, it's slowly trying to build that, kind of that expectation that you are not going to have access to that throughout the day. And how does your body feel?
But now there are people who rely on coffee because that starts their day. They can't work without it. That's very different to enjoying the aroma of coffee. So therefore, you adding coffee in your day, I don't think would have a negative impact because you're not reliant on it. You enjoy it. There are people who do rely on it, that once they still have to work, they still have to do all the other things, but they don't get their coffee, it will become stressful.
Okay.
And that's different. So it's understanding that there's certain things that we do, our habits, because now we've created those habits to keep us going. But there are things that we do, our habits, because we actually enjoy it, but we're not reliant on it.
So I wanted to say, you mentioned inflammatory foods, and I was going back to my friend who was also eliminating certain foods, but when we're talking about inflammation, the first thing that comes to mind in Ramadan is fried foods.
That's interesting.
Oils. A lot of the times people expect to have something that is quite stodgy, something that is quite, I wouldn't say drenched in oil. Rich, it's that association that, yes, we're in it, because from my experience, there's a complete different array of food that are more or less present during Ramadan that you would not have throughout the year. And a lot of it tends to be fried foods. And a lot of it also tends to be a lot of sweets.
Correct.
Middle Eastern sweets are very rich in sugary syrups, as well as fresh cream and butter and all of it. So
So again, I think with inflammation, when I speak of inflammation, I'm actually talking about trigger foods, foods that would actually have your immune system flare on it. Right. And so that would be sort of things like potentially like your gluten, your dairy, eggs in a lot of people. And, sometimes when you're, say, daily habits, if you wake up in the morning, whatever, you go out with your friends and you're, eating at a coffee shop, or you regularly order Deliveroo in the evening and you're choosing more fast foods, but during Ramadan you come and you're like a little bit more family and you're eating more home cooked. You might not necessarily eat those inflammatory foods that would be so consistent during your regular months. And you might be feeling better because you've actually negated so many of those things. That could be your inflammatory foods. In terms of fatty foods, they can be rich on the digestive system, harder to digest, but not necessarily inflammatory. But then sugar can cause inflammation. Can worsen your insulin spikes and those kind of things. Can obviously, some people will lose weight. Maybe in Ramadan, some people won't lose weight because they are consuming those heavier, higher calories in a shorter window and therefore gain weight and could be relatively more inflamed because of it. But trigger foods are a little bit different. Your inflammatory foods that we actually can test for, you might not be consuming them and then feeling better. Your timings are told to you of when you're going to eat during Ramadan. Whereas culturally, a lot of times people eat just before going to bed. Right? They haven't prioritized their sleep, not knowing that actually when you eat relative to your sleep matters. The longer we have to digest our food, we don't want to be digesting while we're trying to sleep because then we're not having a restful sleep. And in Ramadan, maybe if people choose to have like a really heavier sort of iftar and they'd have a very, very light meal, say after prayers, and have a little bit more time with the family, they've digested. So when they go to bed, they're actually, the shorter window of sleep may be shorter, but the quality may be better. So they wake up the next day feeling actually relatively better, clearer in the mind, less brain fog, less inflammation, less brain fog, happier because they're not having to their calories are well controlled, they've digested, So there's a lot potential reasons for feeling better, just as there are a lot potential reasons for not feeling better, you know, depending on which camp you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we take it back to first principles, just wanted to ask that question. If we go like from an overarching perspective, like what is the link between food, what we eat, and what we think, feel, experience?
Yeah.
In terms of, because everyone knows on the audience, I'm going to talk about the mental health aspects of this.
So, you know, your first line was, you are what you eat. I always take that a step further, like, you are not what you eat, you are what you absorb. Right? So just because you've eaten it, it doesn't mean that if your gut health is not as robust as it should be, that you're absorbing as well as you should be. Right. So foods contain a lot of nutrients, contain a lot of good things, but your gut health is where your neurotransmitters are made, your immune system is made, and that all happens in the gut. So how you eat, how you absorb, how the gut functions, your neurotransmitters that you make, the chemicals that make you feel a certain way can be responsible based upon your gut health and then your food. Is it helping it or if it's not helping it? And so what you eat can change the microbiome, the environment of the digestive system with all the good bacterias and things like that, allowing for the functionality of this digestive system to be more efficient or not, you know? So it's food, but it's also gut health.
Clearly our audience thinks this is an absorbing conversation. Thank you for the pun. I can see the questions coming in. What we want to do first is we're going to ask our first poll question of the day. So if you keep tuned to your screens, hopefully you should see the poll question we want to ask you pop up on your screens in just a moment. Here we go. What's the hardest part of eating well during Ramadan? Is it planning meals? Is it managing cravings? Is it the energy dips? Or knowing what's actually good for you? When people walk into your clinics, what are the things they find hard about eating well? Not just during Ramadan, but in general. I say, well, here we go. Planning meals, managing cravings, energy dips, or knowing what's actually good for me.
A, B, C, and D. Let's go all of them.
We ask these polls every time, and I always say we don't. Well, there should be an E, which is all of the above.
All of the above.
But on this one, go with us. Let us know which is the one you struggle with the most.
No, I think the least I think people actually talk to me about are energy dips. I mean, they'll come in and be like, I'm fatigued, and I'll go through it, and they'll be like, okay, an energy dip. But they won't come and say, I have this energy dip, because you'll only know how good you can feel until you feel it. This is all they know, so they don't necessarily say this is a good thing or a bad thing unless they've felt better. But what to eat, definitely, like when is the right time to eat what, that will make me feel the best. Because obviously you have a shorter eating window, but you've obviously been awake and fasting. And technically there is an element of we are, you know, it's a sacrifice, isn't it? That's what we're trying to do during this time. So, you know, carbs, protein, fats, the way in which we eat them can stabilize our sugar for longer, depending on if we have more fat, if we have more protein, what becomes important when. If we just eat carbohydrates, that's not necessarily going to be helpful, because we're going to have a blood sugar high, we're going to have a low, and if we're fasted and it's low, it's going to make us struggle for longer. So, you know, what to eat when and how and timing, that is something that I get a lot of questions on. And quality of nutrition. People are not really necessarily aware of what good quality and why.
Okay. And I'm going to, you kind of nailed it on the head for our audience there. We've got a little bit of an arm wrestle. Planning meals and energy dips are actually the two lowest priorities here. We've got managing cravings, which is 27%. And then the top answer is actually knowing what's good for me.
Yeah.
So what is good for them? Yeah, we've got 35% of our audience here going, I don't know what's good for me. What should they be prioritizing? You know, especially, are there good foods that support during Ramadan, you know, during those, you know, whether it be sahur, whether it be iftar?
Yeah, I mean, like, so when people come to see me, obviously there are people who will do iftar and they will have suhoor before they go to sleep, and then they'll not wake up for necessarily the morning suhoor before they start work. There are people who will wake up before prayer time and then they'll eat. So there's many different camps. But I always say that when you're fasted, and if you are losing weight and you're burning body fat, toxins are stored in your fat. So when you release this, you do require a lot of antioxidants in order to absorb it so you don't feel as poorly.
Okay.
You know, when your protein, for me, I always tell people that when they break their fast, protein, veg, carbs, it is the more Mediterranean kind of diets we eat, the better. But because you fasted for a long time, I always say that your white meats are probably better when you first break your fast because they're easier to digest when you haven't eaten for such a long period of time.
Yeah.
You've just connected with a question that actually, I think it's Gera. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but Gera's asked actually, is a vegetarian diet healthy? And again, how to fill my protein intake. Again, if the people are fasting, and as you're saying, people are coming off coming out of the fast, and you say do the white meat first. What's the advice to vegetarians? Because obviously we have my daughter is vegetarian.
So I definitely think that as a vegetarian, you have a risk of actually being a little bit nutrient deficient, even though you're having a lot more plant-based, but you also then rely on carbohydrates to fill you up because you don't have that protein. So what I always tell people who are vegetarian is to know what your plant-based proteins are and make sure you stock up on these beans and, the quinoa and the various different types, but to get all essential amino acids, because we don't get them all from all the proteins that are plant-based. And if we struggle to get all our proteins, I think it's very important to actually supplement with potentially like a protein shake that's clean, so that you're getting your amino acids throughout the day, supplying with that, be it, a plant-based protein powder. If you're dairy sensitive, I think that's good to support your protein intake during the day, and making sure you still get enough good fats. So you get your omega-3s, and all your fat-soluble vitamins require fats. So not to be afraid of fats, but your olives, your avocados, your nuts and your seeds, and you rotate them so that the immune system's not seeing the same protein all the time as well, even though they're fats.
So, and I can see some of the questions are actually coming into a wider conversation around nutrition, and also some really interesting around intermittent fasting and fasting in general. Before we let's stay with Ramadan, because that will be, a few days away, particularly when the podcast comes out next week. It's coming fast. So, Maissa, I want to tag you in from your, even from your lived experience every year. What do you think would be helpful for people to know from Dr. Shefali around?
So while we were talking, there was something that I felt I wanted to get a little bit more clarity, and that was hydration. So we've been talking about food, and I remember, and this may or may not be something that I should do this year round, but last year I had actually started drinking electrolytes throughout.
Perfect. 10 out of 10.
And I'll tell you why, because I don't admittedly drink enough water during my normal days.
Yeah.
And I know that I will, drink at the point of breaking my fast, but then I'll start drinking things like, whether it's teas, whether it's, I don't drink many juices, but it's not enough. And I had realized that I was starting to develop that headache and that fogginess. But when I started drinking electrolytes, I actually had a clearer head the next day, and it saw me through. And even the thirst aspect, I didn't feel as thirsty, because over time, this is just from a experience, over time, you are more aware of your thirst rather than your hunger as you progress through the fasting month.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, 10 out of 10, because I think that I always recommend people break their fast with electrolytes. You are not, when we lose water, be it sweat, urinating and so on, so all the other ways we detoxify, it is not just water that we lose. We lose salts. And often people can drink more water than you do, enough water, in fact, even more than enough water, but still feel parched. It's because the body is not asking for water. It's asking for the salts.
Right.
Stress depletes sodium. and that's why sometimes, obviously, it is a stressful situation. You are fasting, and so, but you're working. You're having your day-to-day other stresses that are consistent.
Yeah.
We lose salt, and we're not replenishing that salt. We sweat. I mean, now Ramadan's coming earlier and earlier. It's not as hot as it was, but you lose a lot.
Yeah.
People still train. They still do all those things. We need to replenish not just water, but the salts that we lose.
I'm hoping that's answered your question, by the way. Olu Misi, again, I think I got that one right, because they were asking what actually are electrolytes and why are they helpful for us. So hopefully that answers that question. But he's also asking what examples, what are particularly good ones out there without product placement. What should people be looking for?
There are a lot of people who don't, if they don't want to take supplements, they'll do the coconut water and they'll do things like that. But we can actually get supplements that have the electrolytes, the right sodium, and chloride and your potassiums and your magnesiums and things like that that are in that. You don't want ones that are high in sugar or sweeteners and have to taste sweet, so they taste good and so you have it. We are adding salt. You can actually add Himalayan sea salt to your water in the morning with like lemon or whatever, and then they can replenish the salts that you're losing. And you're right. Sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I will have electrolytes first thing. I come down even before my coffee, and in that moment, just the moment I have it, you have this sense of clarity. It can be quite strong, that feeling, actually. And I think during Ramadan, I think it's very important for everybody to have electrolytes.
Yeah.
I want to bring in a question from Omar El Ghazal. Thank you for your question, which does align to a question that actually came in earlier as well. As a man trying to lose weight, how could Ramadan be used in the proper way aligned with my goal? Daily routine, food type, water consumption, exercise, sleep.
I mean, I think that, Maissa had touched on it earlier about how it can start off the habit, because instead of you choosing to restrict your time of eating, Ramadan does it for you. Yeah. So you have a time restricted eating. And so you can consume potentially less calories because we're taking away the ability to just consistently eat. And that's a good way. But obviously it's also trying to follow more of the important macronutrients within each meal. So still try and get your 2 to 3 meals in if you can, and keep it with your sort of like, have I got enough protein? Have I got my good cooked vegetables and my carbohydrates that are sufficient? And lay off your inflammatory foods. I would also say that when you break your fast, often I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a 1, 3, 5, or 7 dates, right? Now, I always tell my clients, especially if one has a metabolic disorder or they're pre-diabetic, that you should be in the 1 date camp, not the 7-day camp.
No.
Because it is still sugar and it does still raise. And honestly, like one of my mentors used to tell me that like a date is like a teaspoon of sugar. A dehydrated fruit has no water to dilute. It is pure sugar. It still has that responsive sweetness. So I would be in that 1 date to break your fast, not the 7. So little things like that, just because other people are doing it, your goals are different. Make sure that you're well hydrated, and to feel a little bit hungry in someone who's quote unquote dieting is important. To calorie restriction is important, and that can set off a good starting point that they can continue thereafter.
Okay.
Can I also just ask, with regards to the last question that he had referred to as in all aspects, the fitness part. And I know that there's always, when do I train?
Yeah.
If I'm fasting, how do I fit it in? Do I do it before? Do I do it after? Do I do it just after having my first meal or after the second? Or what would you advise?
Honestly, it really depends, again, what camp you're in. If you're somebody who will have 1 meal and then you go and then you pray and then you want to sleep by 12, training post iftar is going to affect the sleep quality that you want, because training changes. It can affect your sleep quality.
Wow.
But if you're somebody who had, say, suhoor early before you started work, as opposed to having suhoor at midnight.
Yes,
but if you had suhoor before Fajr, I think it is, in the morning, then you're able to be closer. You have a relatively shorter non-eating window. Then eating prior to iftar could be a good call for you.
Right.
And then you replenish, you you might pray and so on and so forth, and then you eat again, and then you may sleep, and then wake up again. Right. So either you're somebody who isn't struggling as much just before, but if you're somebody also who naps, you have the ability to nap during your fasting time, then waking up and then again training before iftar could be a good call for you.
Would you, there are so many different types of trainings. So there are those who do very light, and there are those that go into a full-on circuit train.
Typically, I always tell people you can go light because movement is medicine, and appropriate movement is real medicine. And if that works for you, that's totally fine. People who like intensity can go and be intense. I often say reducing the volume. So if you're somebody who, say, does 5 sets normally, maybe during Ramadan you still do heavy weights, but maybe you'll only do 3 sets.
Okay.
So you're still maintaining good strength and power, but you don't have to extend this length of time because that might not be beneficial for you.
That's really interesting.
You don't want to reduce, but you don't need to, you're not going to break records, let's be honest, and that's what you shouldn't be looking to do.
I'll bring in a question from Catherine as well. Thank you for your question, Catherine, which I think is kind of related, and it also sort of harps back to something we were talking about earlier as well. So obviously, when you're training, there is the risk of inflammation. She's asking, particularly around training as well, what foods are inflammatory? And you were obviously talking about that during, Ramadan, in some of the iftars, you might be exposed to. So what are those inflammatory foods that if people are serious about training and continuing with their training
and staying in good shape,
that they should avoid or choose?
Yeah, I would say always be aware of where your protein. You need to have enough protein if you want to maintain your gains, because ultimately, if you're dramatically decreasing your calories and you are training, you're utilizing all that, you're not necessarily going to be building or maintaining. In fact, you could also atrophy. Your muscles can become smaller.
Right.
So choosing good quality nutrition is super important, but also maintaining calories from good sources. So be your avocado stuff so you can get calories, but they're not necessarily, they're quite inert. Things like avocado, olives, for the most part is really good for you. Obviously your cooked vegetables, I wouldn't sit there eating sort of like, salads and trying to be dieting within this shorter window. But then like you were talking about earlier, like you might be going in and not normally have these pastries and these sambusas and these whatever. And then suddenly in Ramadan, everyone's like, you go in people's houses.
Yes, yeah.
That is taking you away from the way how you normally eat.
Yeah.
You can't do something different and expect the same result. It's something that's going to change. So I would move away from all these extra, just because you've fasted for a long time doesn't mean that, cakes every day are going to, be non-existent. It's still going to affect you if you have a cake every day. You wouldn't normally do it. I wouldn't be choosing to be doing it during Ramadan.
Yes,
it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
I always say this. It's okay to say no as long as you follow it with a thank you.
Yes. That's...
I'm going to say that to my wife now because she's very good at the first. A question as well, which is interesting. And I think it's interesting as well looking at the month of Ramadan from a Nuj, which is like, and it's a... Sometimes when people are experiencing depression, there can be a link to lower levels of vitamin D. What's the connection between that and food/diet? How do we support mental health while also making sure that, during while we're fasting? While we're taking something away that actually is supporting something that we need to regulate our mental health.
So there's a couple of things like in terms of that question. So one, if you are dramatically dropping your blood sugar, that can make you feel awful.
Okay.
And you can feel like low.
Irritable.
If you just choose to have, 0 carbohydrates because you're trying to do it really well and trying to lose even more weight, carbs raise serotonin. Serotonin makes you happy. You're happy, you're full. I don't generally take away a food group per se.
Okay.
Now, in terms of inflammatory foods, what we often find also is that constipation is very common during Ramadan. And that could be because you're not drinking enough water, but it also could be that you are consuming foods you wouldn't normally consume that are inflammatory. And if you don't, quote unquote, poop, every day, you are
It's
not
a health
detoxifying.
podcast, we can say.
We are not detoxifying. And if we're not detoxifying, that actually, the longer it stays in the colon, the more water is being reabsorbed from the colon. And that takes all the toxins back into circulation. So we are circulating things that should be detoxified, which can affect mood, mental health. Because now we're you see children who, when they're constipated, they're naughty, they're not focusing. And the moment they have a good poop, suddenly they're like sat down, focused, coloring, because they don't know how to articulate that they're not okay. You know, that is the same for adults. Inflammation and what you choose to eat and balancing your blood sugars, balancing your hormones is what regulates how we behave and how we feel and how we're normal. I always tell people, even when they're feeling low and depressed, they're not deficient in an antidepressant. There is something else that's going on. And we should look for that.
Can I ask something that
Yes.
I want to get a little bit of a better understanding of from the hormone perspective? Being female, a lot of females who fast during Ramadan see that sometimes there is a change in their menstrual cycle, and sometimes it is delayed, sometimes it is brought forward. What happens?
So I don't think it's a one size sort of fits all. It's either that, but yes, you're right. Both can happen. Just to the people that find it quite stressful, it can often delay a period. If it was regular, we've made a massive change. A massive change can often, in anything, any stress can affect your period. If they go, oh, what happened that month? Oh, I was really stressed. Okay, that can make sense because hormonally, stress actually affects, we were talking about this earlier, but it has a physiological consequence to the human body. It's not just like we are stressed and it ends there. No, it affects the body.
Yes.
It affects the microbiome. The microbiome affects detoxification, hormones. It affects it all.
Right.
On a positive note, though, if it wasn't regular and suddenly it becomes regular, it begs the question, either do you overconsume your calories on a regular basis? Are you more insulin resistant? So if you have something like polycystic ovarian syndrome where, you know, you're more insulin resistant, but during these 30 days you've become relatively more insulin sensitive because we're controlling nutrition, it can start to regulate the ovulation and therefore regulate the hormones, as long as you maintain the similar habits. You know, you have to look at what were you doing in order to have these negative. So I always say this, you do what you always have done, you're going to get what you've always gotten.
That's true.
Yeah. So if you change something and it created a positive impact, what was it that changed? Ask that question.
Okay.
I'm going to bring in a couple of questions again from the audience. We should, because I know we could do it. We should have done this one for 2 hours. Gladen asked the question, what biomarkers do you think are most meaningful to track during fasting? And should I do this long term?
I think so. Male, female, a bit different, but I always like people to also look at their thyroid, especially women, because women's cycle changes obviously on a monthly basis. And so the requirement of calories at different times and different macronutrients are important. And so I don't think one size fits all. So sometimes the body can think that, oh, well, I am fasted and I'm doing intermittent fasting all the time. So now my body's not getting enough nutrition. So it affects the thyroid and the metabolic hormones. We should be checking those. I definitely think insulin is important to look at, like, am I actually improving my insulin sensitivity, or am I becoming hypoglycemic? We don't want to have a lower blood sugar either, and it becomes stressful. And therefore, then you want to also be looking at your stress hormones. Even your cholesterol markers can change. Your inflammatory markers can change on better nutrition. To be honest, all your markers can be positively and negatively affected by how and what you eat.
Omar's asking a question, a loaded question. Does the salt I get from food be considered the same as electrolyte? Talking as a person who is addicted to extra salt on my plate.
So again, the white
I feel you, Omar.
The white table salt isn't the same as Himalayan sea salt for a start. Secondly, I would say if you really are somebody that craves salt, it can also be an indication that your adrenal function, especially if you're going through chronic stress, and like I was saying, you're depleting your salt, your body's asking for salt. Salt, sodium chloride isn't the same as sodium chloride, potassium, magnesium. So that doesn't mean that you don't need your magnesium. You still need your magnesium. So I wouldn't say it equates to it, but I think that not everybody should be, salt isn't a bad thing like it used to be thought of it.
Oh, yes.
Right? It used to be like, oh, let's not have any more salt. I'm going to get higher blood pressure. But table salt doesn't equate to good salt either.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to give Eddie his moment in the sun. Eddie, thanks for... He's posted a couple of observations, and I just want... Let's discuss. He's saying he's a firm believer in restricting carbs and sugar to promote ketone production. And also he's found coffee, and when he talks about coffee, he's talking about pure coffee with no sugar or no milk. That's helped him with his cravings. Does that gel, or is that an individual experience?
No, so the first thing about keto, it definitely works for some people. I wouldn't say it works for everybody. I think you need to monitor what your cholesterol markers are before and after. So true keto also includes high fat, good fat diet, like in terms of your macros. Not everyone is a good fat oxidizer, and therefore some people actually it raises their cholesterol markers. So I think you need to still check. Can it make you lose weight? Yes, avoiding carbs can. So yes, it works for some. I wouldn't say it works for all. Black coffee can get rid of sugar cravings because it is a technically quote unquote stimulant, and it basically causes blood sugar to be available in case of a stressful situation, which then makes you feel like you don't need it in that moment. But if we consistently are in having loads of coffee instead of your meals because you're hungry and then you go for that coffee and then you think, okay, I didn't have any sugar, but the body's releasing it. When it releases this blood sugar, it also is releasing insulin to tackle this blood sugar that has not come with food, but with coffee. I don't think you're going to have necessarily the best body comp. You're thinking you're not eating, but it doesn't necessarily equate to having the gains you think you're going to be getting.
Right.
I feel like we could go down a rabbit hole just on that one.
Yeah.
We have a second poll. We need to bring it in.
Yes.
Again, hopefully if you turn to your screens, the poll question will come up. A reminder, if you're listening on the podcast or indeed you're watching this on YouTube, the live engagement is for Cigna Healthcare members. And if you want to get involved and ask questions like so many are doing today, please reach out to Cigna Healthcare to find out more details about membership and join us next time live on the conversation. Okay, what's the biggest positive change you noticed during Ramadan? We'll come to you in a moment on that one, Maissa. Better self-discipline with food, improved digestion or reduced snacking, a calmer mood or more gratitude, a clearer routine and sleep structure, or E, I don't really notice a positive shift. So for you,
I was just saying,
better self-discipline with food?
So I've never really had an issue with my food.
Okay.
For me, I feel the sleep goes out the window.
Okay.
It's so disruptive. I do mean to, my intentions are to go to bed at a reasonable time. And then that doesn't happen because of a lot of the weekend suhoor invites, sometimes going and spending time with family and everybody, the hours stretch and then you find yourself having just crazy whack sleeping schedules. But what I did notice is, for me personally, it gives my digestive system a rest.
Oh, okay.
I tend to, without giving up too much information, I tend to do feel that I bloat quite easily during my normal days, and it can be quite painful at times. And I did used to have quite chronic IBS in my younger years. But whenever I fast, it's like my entire system is calm and I feel calm.
Wow.
So it helps in that sense. And then the minute I consume something, it's just like, boom.
So you're in the B camp then with the improved digestion or reduced snacking. Improved digestion, but also perhaps a calmer mood.
It definitely does.
Top answer, better discipline with food, self-discipline with food. Interesting. And then the next top answer is that improved digestion. And actually what's I think perhaps positive from this is that only 4% of people tuning in today say they don't really notice a positive shift. So nearly everybody on this podcast is actually taking something positive from that fasting experience. I want to bring in a question from Maxwell as well, who's asking what's the correlation between food substances like chocolate and an individual's mood?
So, I remember... So
my mood's improving just thinking about chocolate.
Yeah. But sugar actually obviously is one thing. So some people always need a little piece of whatever. But around your period, menstrual cycle, a lot of women tend to crave magnesium. And they actually get it from chocolate. And so they crave a lot more. Magnesium is a calmer.
Yes.
Magnesium it helps your sleep. Magnesium helps your sugar cravings. Magnesium helps a lot of different things. So in terms of, I definitely see a correlation between the need for mag if you're craving chocolate. Now, I also think that, obviously dark chocolate versus milk chocolate, there are a lot of positive things that come with that, with the amount, less like sugar, less milk, no milk, actually, the darker you go. And it helps a lot of postmenopausal, perimenopausal women, actually, dark chocolate. And when you're craving it, they often say that actually if you grate dark chocolate in perimenopause, menopausal women, and you just have it just touch the roof of your mouth, you get a lot of the neuro something or another, I can't remember, but it's between brain connection with it. There is a connection that gets absorbed, but through the absorption from the palate.
So just having the shavings on the roof.
Yeah.
There you go.
And you
Great
pick a
question.
little bit.
Thank you very much
Dentists
for that one.
everywhere.
Actually, speaking of dentists, I was going to say oral health and gut health, because it is actually the beginning of your digestive in the mouth, is super important.
It is.
When it comes to gut health and mood and things like that. And during fasting, the salivary glands actually have almost like a reset, and is proven to start a better gut health process during Ramadan and
so
fasting.
Interesting.
I can't believe how fast this podcast is going.
Oh, wow.
These are the puns they pay me for. But I wanted to bring in a couple more questions before time loses, because we've got about 10 minutes left. There's been 2 or 3 questions, and Ujan and Arjun have also asked questions around, okay, so I'm an expat. I wouldn't necessarily choose to fast during Ramadan, but should I? Is this something that I should be looking into? Because we do see more and more headlines as well around the benefits of fasting. So
in terms of, there's a lot of talk on terms of like the telomeres and the calorie restriction and longevity per se. I think too much of a good thing isn't always a good thing. Do I think it affects both sexes equally? No, I think it works better in men than women. I don't think women should do it all the time, especially intermittent fasting. But you have to think about, what is it that is helping you? Is it just sheer fasted? Is it because when you fast, you are restricting calories that you would not normally restrict? That's going to be helpful.
Eliminating something.
Eliminating something makes a difference. Allowing you to sleep better, because now you're stopping eating earlier, so you're sleeping better. If you sleep better, your appetite hormones and your hunger hormones shift positively. When you don't sleep, your hunger hormone increases.
Definitely.
And your appetite suppression hormone decreases. So therefore,
makes a lot
again,
of sense, actually.
sleep Sleep really, really matters in how you choose to eat the next day, and what makes you happy and what makes you not happy. So yes, there's a lot of health benefits. Is it, again, one size fits all? No, it still needs to be individualized.
It's like you're reading these questions that are coming in. No, Arjun, no, don't apologize. Arjun was asking, should we get more sleep if we're fasting? Is that something that people should be intentional about, or should they literally just be optimizing the sleep they get?
In general, they should be optimizing the sleep that they get. But once you've optimized the sleep you get, so sleep quality comes first before quantity, then I would elongate this good quality to get it into the 7 to 9 hours.
Great.
Yeah.
And then another question from Sherry Sell. I hope that's right. Sherry Sell. Sorry if that's slightly wrong. Omega-3, does that help? Should we take it during Ramadan in particular? And also coming back to vitamin D, vitamin B supplements, what are the things that people can turn to?
I mean, I think being on a good multivitamin
Yeah.
would be good to cover all bases. If you have not tested your vitamin D, I would rather you did that so you knew how deficient or
Yes.
insufficient
Yeah.
it is, so that you can mark it towards, being something that we can then retest later. It's important for the immune system. It's important for hormones. It's important for skin. I mean, it's important, but know what your values are.
Yeah.
A multivitamin, though, I think is important because, like I said, when you're fasting, you are releasing toxins, especially if you are fat oxidizing and you're losing body fat. And the multivitamin helps the detoxification process. True detoxification, not like I'm detoxing from sugar, I'm detoxing from fruit. True detoxification requires protein and requires nutrients. And so that's why when you are fasted, to decrease your risk of getting infections or not feeling so good, you need to optimize your protein so that you're not in catabolic phase, so you're still building, and you need to optimize your nutrients and a multivitamin.
Can I stay with this as well? Richard's asked the question, and I know because obviously I know you're very strong physically, as well as mentally, of course. And my boy does this in the gym. He will either be on a bulk or a shred. And Richard's asked the question as well around at the minute I'm doing fasting because he wants to lose weight. He's on a shred essentially. And he's then, as soon as he's lost the weight, he's going to stop that in March. Is this recommended? My boy does it all the time. I see a lot about this whole idea of shred and then bulk and then shred and then bulk. What's your feeling on this?
I always feel like when you go and you do a quote unquote shred, it is about restriction, right?
Yes.
You're restricting something. You're going to technically become catabolic, like I said. So when you start to bulk, you're actually starting from a little bit of a lower to go a little bit higher because in that, phase. I think, yes, there are a lot of people who will lose body. I don't like the term shred because you're already like looking for your six pack and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But I think, yes, can you lose body fat and grow at the same time? I do believe you could do both because I always feel that you can see the sound of a shred and a bulk is like stress and then stress.
Yes.
But it's not a lifestyle. It's like a diet,
Yeah.
right? I believe that if you want this to be your lifestyle, to be in good shape a lot of the time, I would aim to find the consistent aspect that works for you a lot of the time. But then say you need to go to that wedding or you need to go to
Yes.
Maldives, you need to have,
Yes.
then you
Yeah.
can do a shred and a bulk during that time, for that,
Yeah.
whatever it is, you've got your eventual goal.
Talking about the wedding, sorry, Jessica's asked a question.
Oh, sorry.
Which is not something I've ever had to try to face, really. As a woman, how to fast properly without risking losing fat in key parts like face and lips?
Oh,
Well,
I
that's
was not thinking of that as
interesting.
key
I was
parts.
I wonder whether or not that is because of the current trend of how people are trying to lose weight faster, like with
Right.
these, the
with
new,
the
the new things that
Yes.
are out
Yeah.
there, and
LLPs
then
or
some
whatever they're-
GLP-1s.
GLP.
Yeah,
There you go.
because you get that sort of like Ozempic face that you lose your
Yes.
collagen and you lose like what it looks
You
like.
have
because,
Ozempic, many other
you
body
know,
parts as well, I heard.
So
Yes.
I think that ultimately when you're looking to be a size 0 but trying to maintain a size 4 in different places, it's quite hard to do. You really have to. It's not as easy, but you've got to weight train.
Yes.
Like you've got to weight train to what gives you the shape is not necessarily the fat. What gives
Yeah.
you the shape is actually the muscle. The size of you is actually also a lot in the muscle.
I think in this instance, it's a bit challenging because she did specify the face and the lips.
Yeah, but I also think that
I don't know.
also it depends on age. So when you try and
Yes.
lose weight
Yeah.
much later, when your estrogen is starting to dip,
Okay.
you lose a lot of your elasticity.
Yes,
So it depends
yes.
on,
That is
those kind of
true.
things.
That is true.
Time is ticking down, but you just sparked a question in my head, which I think is actually a really, really valid question for someone who's trying to fast. We do have this rise of Ozempic, Mounjaro, there's other brands
There's so many
exist.
more, I think. Yeah.
What should people know or think about if they're thinking this is going to be an easy way for me to fast if I just take one of these appetite suppression medications?
Well, I don't think that's the only thing that it is, though. I think it's to read up. First of all, what are your comorbidities? You know, what are you really trying to do? You know, I have people coming in who just want to lose this little bit of, you know, fat on their tummy, and what is a bloat, necessarily not even fat, but then start taking, you know, because it's easily available. I also think it's important. Weight loss doesn't always mean fat loss. It can also mean muscle loss. So what are you looking at? Are you trying to be a size? Are you trying to like weigh less? The moment you are losing muscle, you look like those size zeros, small, whatever. But on a health aspect, you might be even getting sicker because now we're worried about your bone density. We're worried about the collagen. We're worried about, you know, I really think that if you have a massive insulin issue and you are, you know, morbidly obese, doing it under a doctor's guidance, who are looking at all your nutrients at the same time, making sure that they've altered your nutrition, because if you do what you've always done, the moment you're off it, you're going to get what you've had always gotten. So learn something during this phase.
Not a lot of people do that in the preferred method. So I have a few friends who have had to. They've gone through, I think it is Monjaro, with their doctors and a nutritionist, and they've consistently been on it for, I think, over a year. But they also train, and and that's the right way of doing it. It's not like that short. Quick fix,
because they've now learnt habits that weren't there before. That even if they were to come off it, they've still got these habits that they've had enough time to make it. You know, that they felt good for it. Yeah. That's important.
Time really is against us now. Let's just focus on some do's and don'ts then. And from both of you, you know, particularly with Ramadan, helpful do's.
I mean, I would say 100% electrolytes is maintaining good protein. 10 out of 10. Get enough. Make sure you do also get enough fiber, because detoxification, you know, regular bowel movements is so important to making it feel like good. You know, you want to decrease the controllable stresses, and you don't need to be constipated.
If I was going to ask very quickly a snapshot of what the first meal would ideally look like when one is at that point, excuse my voice, breaking their fast, in light of what we were talking about with regards to the dates, with regards to the electrolytes, what else would you say ideally?
So, you know, I would have said like, you know, white meat, a little bit of like carbs, probably more in that soupy kind of like format, because we're first breaking the fast. We want to get it in. They're like waiting for it with your electrolytes. So you want to get the nutrients in. Do you know what I mean? And then once it's already started to assimilate, then I would go on to the next meal. So your vegetables actually would come later, because the digestibility of like plants takes time. I would wait for a little bit later. Red meat too, really. I would be a little bit later, depending on when you're sleeping, because red meat can keep you up too and needs digestion. But I feel like the white meat is easier to digest. It's not as uncomfortable. And I probably would do that more in my first meal, so that I'm getting all the, you know, easy carbs, really, that are non-inflammatory.
So like rice,
potato, sweet potato, you know, would be probably my, because they got the fibers in them without it being difficult to digest.
We've got about 30 seconds left. Final reflections. Maissa.
To be honest, I feel that we've just discussed so much, but it's all been so informative, and there have been many aha moments for me.
Oh, yay.
And this has been great.
This has been great.
I think we've tried to get all the questions in, but I also wanted to ask you, if we didn't answer a question and people want to reach out and get 5 more, because we opened the door on quite a lot of topics, how can they reach out to you?
So I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Dr. Chef. I have a clinic if they wanted to come see me at the Flow Space. So any of those.
That's it. Well, I hope that has made you full, at least for now, on knowledge, if not food. Thank you once again for joining us. Please remember, after we close the webinar, you will be asked for feedback. We love feedback. It's a gift. It helps us make the podcast and the webinar better for you. And also, while you're there, remember, go and check out past episodes. We've got some absolute corkers from resilience, children's mental health, men's mental health, the importance of movement, the power fear of failure. So much insight there. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for being engaged in the polls and the questions. Dr. Shefali, thank you very much
you.
for being
It's been a
here with
pleasure.
us today. And from all of us at Connect for Health, Ramadan Kareem in advance.